You can't give that which you have not. On the Rwandan youth, Kagame, Himbara, and the long memory of a broken country. Written by Gabriel Ndayishimiye. Chapter 7. Nothing but the truth, and that got me fired. The kettle screams itself hoarse in the next room, a shrill mechanical reproach for my inertia, as if the fire beneath it could awaken something long since extinguished in me. I do not rise, I never do. I sit, as I often sit, in a room lit too dimly for honesty, surrounded by shadows that lean in closer than even betrayal ever dared. Not just darkness, but drought. The silence here is not rest, but absence, the absence of flame, of calling, of God. I have mastered stillness. It is my craft. Movement requires conviction, and I have outlived mine. Outside, someone laughs. Of course they do. Laughter is what the living do. Inside, I refresh the app. Again, and again, and again. Why? I no longer pretend to know. Perhaps to see if the wound still stings. Perhaps to prove that my disappointment remains faithful. That it has not, unlike everything else, abandoned me. And yes, there it is. Another space. Another ritual of projection, dressed up as public thought. We speak into the abyss now, and call it engagement. I click, not from expectation, but from habit. Habit is the last religion of the disillusioned. And disappointment, disappointment, is at least consistent. Hope is the real traitor. Earthly hope builds you houses in mist and hands you keys made of air. It flatters the senses, not the soul. Spiritual hope, on the other hand, demands something more harrowing. Faith without sight, grace without evidence. I have always preferred the lies I could see. So I listen. Not for truth, not really. For the echo of it, maybe. For the dull, familiar ache of testimony. Testimony that neither heals nor condemns, only lingers. The room thickens with voices. They bleed, but not enough to die. Not enough to matter. Still, I listen. Like a man pressing a bruise to remind himself he still has flesh. And yes, damn me, I hoped. I hated myself for it, as I always do. Hope is the weakest of addictions. It never satisfies, but always returns. There it was again, twitching in the corner of my chest, mutt-like and loyal, begging for scraps. And then he spoke. Himbara. Calm, deliberate, maddeningly unbroken. I do not trust him. I do not trust anyone. But there is something about a man who has survived the thing he dares to name. His voice did not preach. It bore witness. It recalled without embellishment, like scripture uttered by a man who no longer believes, but cannot stop reciting. There was no plea in it, only the weight of memory offered, like ash. That was worse. There was no fire, no fury, only the low hum of someone who had passed through hell and come out quiet. It unnerved me. Was this calm the residue of grace, or the indifference of someone who had made peace with despair? I could not tell. In that moment, he could have been a silent Christ or a devil too tired to tempt. The title struck me first, of course. Strategic governance versus slogan politics. So pristine, it might have been chiseled into a tomb. Not a name, but a diagnosis. Vision, 2020, the case study of delusion draped in metrics. Kagame, yes, him, the man Himbara once described, without malice, as the boss from hell. Hell does not need horns, only results. He concluded his talk with words that stayed with me. He said he would end his talk with tears, with a plea that the listeners seek revenge on his behalf, not through harm, but through doing good. I felt something, a tightness, or maybe a crack. He was not pleading. He was not performing. He was offering something like mercy, though I do not deserve it. A man who has been broken does not ask for blood. He asks for goodness. That alone is unbearable, because in his brokenness, he offers not vengeance, but grace. And that grace, unearned and unprovoked, lands heavier than any accusation. It shames the unrepentant, like light in the eyes of a man who has grown used to the dark, and somehow that, more than anger, more than revenge, undid me, because it is always the weary ones who speak most clearly of grace. He recalled a meeting in 2009, just a month before he fled Rwanda for good in January 2010. It was an end-of-year review for the economic cluster, all the ministries responsible for the economy, finance, trade, infrastructure, the Rwanda Development Board, and his own strategy and policy unit. They were preparing to publish the GDP data for the year 2008. Everyone presented and contributed. Then the president arrived late. When Kagame spoke, he told them, "Whatever you do, Rwanda must be shown to have grown by 11% for the previous year. That is what you are to report." At that moment, Himbara said he almost fell off his chair. He looked across the room and locked eyes with Mary Bain, then head of the Rwanda Revenue Authority. When their eyes met, he quickly looked down, but Kagame noticed. To show how he knew, Himbara described what came next. After Kagame gave the 11% figure, Musoni James interjected, saying that actually, Rwanda had grown even more than that. The meeting ended, but as they were leaving, Kagame called them back and told them to sit down again. He turned to Himbara and addressed him directly. "Dr. Professor Himbara." "Sir," Himbara replied. "You didn't make any contribution to the discussion?" "No, sir, I didn't." "Well, the floor is all yours." Given the chance, Himbara spoke plainly. He said it was not possible for Rwanda to have grown by 11%, not even close. If they published those figures, the World Bank and IMF, right across the street, would know. They would be in trouble. Kagame looked at him and asked, "So who do you think you are?" "I'm nobody," Himbara replied. "Just your head of strategy." Kagame interrupted him. "It is a fact. You are fired. You are no longer the head. Forget it. We're done with you. And it doesn't mean you get to go anywhere. You'll stay here. I'll be giving you assignments, orders, every day." Still, Kagame pressed again. "But tell us, who do you think you are?" Himbara repeated that he had already answered and listed his qualifications. But Kagame shouted, "No, I see who you are. Let me tell you who you are. You are nothing. You are nothing with your so-called PhD from Canada." Then he gestured to the rest of the room. "Look around this table. Who do you see?" "They're your ministers, your senior officials," Himbara said. "No, look harder. Who are they?" Himbara named them. "These," Kagame said, "are Rwandan heroes, people who brought back the likes of you, who made it possible for you to return. And now you're lecturing us?" Then he shouted, "You are nothing. Get the hell out of here." I sat still for a long time after he said it. "You are nothing." The words echoed, not as an insult, but as a verdict. And perhaps I believed him. Perhaps I wanted to believe him. After all, is that not the temptation of the condemned? To accept the sentence as truth, to rest in it like a casket already lined with self-doubt, as if the burial were prepared long before the death, inviting the condemned to lie back into the familiar shape of their own internal ruin. But there is something crueler than punishment: to be told you have no weight at all, that your intellect, your education, your voice mean nothing, not even enough to hate, just discarded, swept from the room like dust. You are nothing. Yes, and yet here he is, in exile, still thinking, still remembering, still writing, giving testimony to what became of his effort to serve. There is something in Kagame's insult that echoes the language of the abyss, the outer darkness where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth, but also, ironically, it sounds like the beginning of Genesis. From nothing, God made everything. And here Himbara was, told he was nothing. Maybe that's what frightened him. That nothing can still speak. That nothing can still refuse to lie. I have read the scriptures. I remember what Christ said to Pilate: "For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth." And Pilate, like any man in love with order, replied, "What is truth?" That meeting was a dramatization of how systems crucify truth while pretending to revere it. It was a ritual, a sacrament of power, a Eucharist of fear, where truth is broken and swallowed so no one chokes on it later. I do not claim righteousness. I was not brave. I did not fall on a sword. I just refused to clap. And for that, I was erased. And yet, still, I remember. I testify. Still, I testify. Because to be cast into the void and survive it is its own kind of Genesis, echoing the beginning, when from formless emptiness and darkness the first words summoned light. There is a moment in Dante's Inferno when silence is more eloquent than any scream. The sinners, frozen in ice, cannot move, cannot speak. Their souls entombed before their deaths. That is the punishment reserved not for heretics, nor for the violent, but for traitors, those who betrayed the bonds of trust, of love, of truth. I think of that often, because what he did, what they did, was not hatred. It was betrayal dressed in bureaucratic silence. It was the slow freeze of deliberate neglect. Kafka knew something of that silence, too. The trial begins without a crime, without a charge, just a man told he is under arrest. I remember reading it and feeling an eerie familiarity, as if someone had transcribed my own descent into a system that does not recognize individuals, only procedures. Like Joseph K., Himbara was not accused. He simply ceased to be seen as valid. The machinery of guilt needs no fuel. It runs on absence, absence of clarity, absence of justice, absence of voice. And yet the very absurdity of that system makes it sacred to itself. A twisted liturgy. I remember reading Simone Weil, who said that attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity. I wonder if that is why they made sure no one looked at Himbara. To be unseen is to be unmade, And yet, as Weil also knew, God is found in affliction, not because suffering is holy, but because it strips everything false away. What remains is either despair or the divine. Himbara chose neither. He chose to write. And in writing, he refused oblivion. He refused the silence Kagame imposed. He was not asking to be believed. He did not need faith from others. Far from testimony for a court or for history. This is older, closer to Job, sitting in ashes, asking not for justice, but for a witness. Justice demands resolution. A witness only presence. He wrote not to bring about verdicts, but for acknowledgement that someone saw, someone heard, someone remembers, someone, somewhere, to say, yes, this happened. Because memory is its own resistance. Because to speak from the place of nothing is to echo the voice that made the world, and still he testifies.